Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. A couple of weeks ago, I announced that we had a bunch of new sizes of core tackle hover rigs coming out. I talked about how we've got two really light sizes for size 1 hooks, so a very small hook, and then we've got a new size 1 hook that's a little heavier, a 3/32, as well as a size 3/0 hook that's a little lighter than the previous 1/8 ounce and a 3/32. And I had a lot of comments from people asking me why I came out with smaller hooks down to that size 1 in our 1/32 and a 1/16 ounce. And I thought it was kind of interesting because the reality of it is the original hover strolling technique, which originated in Japan, is using extremely small hooks and extremely light weights. So generally speaking, they're using size 4 and size 2 hooks. So that's smaller than even anything that Core Tackle offers. And sizes that I will be coming out with hopefully here in the near future. But it was interesting to me about when you compare Japan techniques to United States techniques, generally they are ultra light and we are significantly heavier. And I tend to personally think the lighter you go, the more bites you get. But the reality of it behind coming out with size 1 hooks was not only to go with lighter sizes, but a lot of it just had to do with the fact that a lot of the baits that I wanted to use, our size 1/0 hooks, were slightly too big. I think if you watch the channel on a regular basis, you know how much I like to use a flatworm. This is a 4 1/4 inch flatworm on the hover rig. So a 3/64 ounce 1/0 hover rig has been a go-to for me with respect to the 4 1/4 inch Berkley Maxent flatworm. The thing with that though is I really want to be using the normal size flatworm, which I think I've got here. So this is their like 3.5 inch size. Just for comparison's sake, to show you the difference, we got the difference right there. So it's a pretty substantial difference in size. Well, this flatworm, the roughly 3.5 inch size, is the mainstay of the Maxent flatworm lineup. Well, the problem is a 1/0 hook is too big for this. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do a size 1 hook. So when I rig it on well, I don't have one rigged up, I guess, but if I do it on a size 1 hook, which you can see here, I've got a little 3-inch Berkley twitch tail minnow, which is almost exactly the same size. It's a much better hook for it. The size 1/0 hook was a little larger. So I love to throw small baits, and I think for people that like throwing small baits as well, that size 1/0 hook was a little big. So that was the reason why we came out with the size 1 hook that you can see in this little twitch tail minnow. Honestly, most of our really finessey drop shot baits work really well on the hover rig. The problem is a lot of those small finessey baits were too small for the hover rig sizes that we had. So that's the main reason we came out with the size 1. It's also because we've got a lot of crappie users out there that like to use little bass baits like a little twitch tail minnow for crappie. And a lot of the baits that I like to use, the size 1/0 hook was slightly too big. So that's another reason why. But I wanted to kind of show you some of the baits that I like to use on the size 1, because I think there is a lot of people out there that look at it and say, hey, that's too small. But in reality, when you look at the baits I'm going to show you that work really good on the size 1 hook, you're going to be like, oh man, these are mainstay bass baits that you use on drop shots or Ned rigs that you just wouldn't have thought about throwing potentially on the hover rig. So, first and foremost, I've got the twitch tail minnow. This is the Berkley Power Bait twitch tail minnow, an absolute killer that has been really forgotten about, in my opinion. Like, this is such a good drop shot bait, and it's so good on the hover rig. But ever since Berkley came out with the flatworm, the twitch tail minnow, which was crushing it for several years, has been like just completely put on the back burner. Now, I don't know if Berkley's still selling a pile of them like they were at one point or not. I know I still love to use them and have a pile of them, and I'm going to continue to use them. And I've kind of brought them back to life quite a bit on my hover rig because they work really well on the small hover rig. So that's one. I mentioned the 3.5 inch Maxent flatworm. This is an absolute killer. If you're using the 4 1/4 inch flatworm, say on that 3/64 1/0, you're going to want to get the size 1 to use the standard max scent flatworm for that. Another one that's really good is the little Demiki armor shad. This is the little 3-inch armor shad. This thing, you know, if you put it, so this is the 1/0 hook. If I were to line this up for you, say about right there, the hook is just too big for the armor shad. But when you drop down to a little size 1 hook, I can get one out. This is just a much better size. Let me line it up. It's just a much better size for that little armor shad. So really dropping from a size 1/0 to a size 1 makes a big difference. But this little guy is an absolute killer on it. If you guys like using the Yamamoto shad shaped worms, they've got a lot of really good sizes all the way down. I think they make a 1.5 or a 2-inch size for crappie. So if you like throwing the shad shaped worm, it works amazingly well on the hover rig. And then the last one that a lot of people I still think are sleeping on is whatever your favorite TRD Ned rig or whatever your Ned rig baits of choice are, really good on the size 1/0 hook. You know, for me, one of the things I've done with Ned rigs for a while now that I think is really outproduced for me with that technique is to go with ultralight Ned rig weights, a size 1/20th and a 1/16 ounce, which are generally lighter than what a lot of people use. I've talked about it on the channel before about how, in my opinion, with the Ned rig, you either go extremely light or you go extremely heavy from your jig head weight standpoint. Well, if you're on a good Ned rig bite where you're catching them on the really light stuff, so a 1/20th of an ounce, a 1/16th of an ounce, a 1/10 of an ounce, you're going to want to try it on the hover rig, because all this is going to do is give it way more action on that fall, and it generally tends to outperform a standard Ned rig head of roughly the same weight. But in most cases, if you were to throw a size 1/0 or larger hook on your traditional Ned rig bait, it's too big for it. It just is a little bit outsized, whereas the little 1/0 or size 1 hook really fits your Ned rigs better than a lot of other baits. But those are some of the ones to think about. Honestly, guys, if you look at your drop shot baits, the ones that you really like to throw, think about putting them on a hover rig, because you're going to add a lot of additional action. And if the size 1/0 hook is too big for whatever that drop shot bait is, drop down to the size 1 hook, and I think you'll see how that fits a lot better. Now, hopefully in the future, we're going to be coming out with even smaller hooks. We do have a larger one. We've got a 3/16 ounce on a heavier gauge 4/0 hook coming out with a heavier weed guard. So for those of you that have been asking for a hover rig that you can flip around or really fish a little bit heavier, or fish for redfish or some other species, that's going to be the one that you want. We hopefully should have that finished from production, I'm thinking in the next couple of weeks, so we should be coming out with that one soon. But in the meantime, we do have 6 sizes. You can get them at Tackle Warehouse, you can get them now at Omnia, you can get them at Baitworks. I'm sure I'm forgetting about some larger retailers out there. A lot of local shops have them now. You can still get them at our website, coretackle.com. So I'll put the link in the video description for you. If that's something that interests you, I would check them out. The other thing I'm going to point out, we are coming out with all 6 of the sizes we have right now. We're going to be coming out with a non-weedless version. We're doing that just because, honestly, I generally bend the weed guard to get it to break off. You know, you bend it back and forth 10-15 times, it'll snap off right at the base. Makes it a little easier to rig, but generally speaking, I would rather just not be breaking the weed guards off. If I'm not going to use them, I would rather use a version that doesn't have the weed guard. So stay tuned for those. We'll have those out here pretty shortly as well. But in the meantime, guys, get yourself some of these size 1s. You're going to see, you're going to catch everything from perch, crappie, bass, walleye, everything. The smaller you go, generally, the more bites you get. So if you got kids or you just are looking to catch numbers of fish, try dropping down in size with some of these baits. I'll put the link for all these baits as well in the video description to Tackle Warehouse. So if you want to pick some up, check them out. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for your continued Core Tackle support. We're coming out with a bunch of new baits, new designs. I got so many different prototypes I'm playing with right now. It's a lot of fun, but it's stressful as well. So we'll get those out sometime soon for you. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Let me know in the comment section, what are your favorite little baits to throw on the hover rig and the small size one hover rig so that other people can learn from you as well.